Well, we're back for the second time this morning as the Pastords with sound.
Should we test the sound with a song?
I think we should.
We
Is it, we want to do the "We Won't Be Home for Christmas" song, or which one do you want to do? That one's a little depressing.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me.
Please have snow and
mistletoe
and presents under the tree. Christmas Eve will find you where the love light gleams.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. I tried to go like Jiminy Cricket there at the end with the dreams.
With kind of a minor there,
kind of a minor. Yeah, it wasn't good. Flat.
There was
minor.
Some flattish going on.
So that's why we do these podcasts versus singing solos. Well, duets, I suppose.
Although, yeah.
In 2000,
it would still be fun to discuss music stuff.
In 2015, we did "Sweet Little Jesus Boy" at the Christmas service at Westside.
Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah, we don't talk about music as much as I. What about Taylor Swift? Why don't we talk about Taylor Swift for a minute?
Well, let's talk about Taylor Swift and Spotify. So, Roger, give me the stats on Taylor Swift now, because I know she broke every record that was ever a record and created new records that weren't even records.
So she's got her latest album, Midnight. 13 songs.
Mm-hmm.
Very autobiographical. Listen to her do an interview. She said there's a lot of melancholy. I actually listened to a number of the songs a couple days ago. And so 13. So she released this, I think, October 21st.
Okay.
2.5 weeks ago. And she did Something Never Done Before. When it was released, I think the first week, every one of the top 10 songs of the Hot 100 was her song.
Off that album.
Right. And her 13 tracks were in the top 15. So every track,
oh gosh,
every song on the album
was in the top 15.
Was in the top 15.
How many downloads already? Or streams, I suppose, is how we.
Well, it's third in all-time streams from a release. There were two other a few years back. But here's one thing that would just be telling and fun. Like, I went to Spotify yesterday.
Yeah.
I wanted to listen to the album. And when I looked down through the songs, one of them had 167 million listens. This is 2 weeks after the release. One of the songs, just on Spotify, which we know is just one music platform, had 167 million listens.
That's just wild.
Yes, it's unprecedented, and and now the number of.
How old is she? She looks like she's forever 21.
she definitely looks 20s, but now she's tied, maybe with Barbra Streisand, for number one albums.
Okay.
Released by a female artist.
Yep.
That have hit number one albums 2 weeks in. So I mean, it's just she's
it's obviously going to continue.
Phenomenal talent.
Well, Marie Griffith has been to several of her concerts.
Has she?
Yeah. So she said she's an incredible entertainer. I mean, crazy stuff. Like you come in, everyone they give you a wristband because based on where you're sitting, and at some point in conjunction with the music and the song, your wristband lights up, and so the whole section you're in is a certain color, and Anyway, it creates effects in the auditorium that they've pre-done, which is just hilarious, but super smart. So great entertainer. But I realized, I was telling Marlena, she's also obviously a great marketer. You know, when we've been watching, Marlena and I just finished last night, the playlist, which is really the story of Spotify. Now, the last season, the last episode is actually a future episode. It fast forwards to Washington, D.C. in the year 2025 and a major Senate hearing.
Okay.
Which is fascinating about, is this a monopoly?
Okay.
But anyway, as of November 7th, 2022, how much do you think Spotify is worth?
Yeah, these numbers just
I know,
always...
it's not even a starting point.
Let me say 150 billion.
No. So 13.65 billion.
Okay, thank you.
No, but that's not a bad guess, because once you get over 100 million, I don't even know what we're talking about.
Right.
I literally can't.
No, you'll keep seeing things like
what will the Washington Commanders sell for?
Or also seeing now that someone in California got the ticket for the $2 billion
in the Los Angeles County area
lottery.
Yeah.
When we start talking billions,
my
mind just gets totally.
So I guess it was 99 that Dan Snyder bought the Washington Redskins for $500 million, which sounds like deal of the century now. At the time, I'm like, that's $500 million.
Right.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Oh,
that's
the same way,
nutty.
Robert Kraft for the Patriots. I forget what the number is, but so comically low number.
One of the things that I was reading in the New York Times in the last month, which just talks about the problem in America of the elite rich are getting richer and richer and richer, and the disproportionate amount of power they have over not just culture but politics and other things. And it is
someone like Elon Musk,
right? So they actually talked about him as one of them that has a disproportionate amount of power now, not only socially but politically. When you buy a social media platform and you make the rules now, it's just going to be interesting. But I was realizing that whole, the land of the free and the home of the brave and the home of the extraordinarily wealthy. And so apparently when they show the statistics, it's like the gap between even the wealthy and the super elite wealthy is it's like stratospherically far. It's just way far away.
Right.
Now, I think they talked about some of this historically has always been true in the United States. So you had the Rockefellers, you had other families that had disproportionate elite wealth compared to even the very wealthy. And so the amount of political power they had and how that even affected the Kennedy family and it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just good reading. I'm not that guy, I have, in terms of world wealth, I guess we were in the top 2%, maybe the top 1%.
Oh, top 1%.
Top 1%.
No, if you, that fun global rich list.
Yeah, global wealth calculator.
.com, where you go on there and just kind of see, punch in your earnings or whatever, and then kind of where you fit in. Yeah, we're easily top 1%. What's fascinating when you're talking about, like, the term millionaire used to be a big deal.
Right.
But, I mean, now you look at what you and I have made over a lifetime. Now you start bumping up near numbers. Now, the idea, I was seeing something the other day, there's like America has all kinds of millionaires.
They have over 1 million millionaires.
And
I don't even know.
And what's interesting, probably is well over, but now it's like, which is just kind of comical to me because it's part of the whole bent of our culture is, oh, that's not going to be enough. So now, the idea that you retire a millionaire, you need to be doing some more work. You need to be getting more insurance. You need to be getting more of this. You need to be getting
dog food in a trailer.
Because if you only have $1 million set aside for retirement, you are in trouble.
Yeah, and see, I'm so simple. This is just because I had this talk with Marlene, and I think Marlene thinks I'm probably a little too simple too on that.
You're scaring her a little.
Yeah,
you scared me just a little.
But I'm like, at that, even at let's say 62. So less than 4 years from now, we could start drawing Social Security,
Right.
And have a couple $1,000s a month coming in. And I'm like, all right, so our house is paid for, and if our cars are paid for, and you don't have any other debt, I don't think the farm will be paid for by then, but so $2,000 a month can go a long way toward gas and groceries, and I guess a cell phone bill. You kind of always have one of those. I don't think that ever goes away. I think unless something shifts,
the kinds of things that we've gotten used to, just a part of life.
This is just a part of life. You have to have the cell phone. But all that to say, I just realized I don't need a lot of, okay, relatively speaking, in American culture, I don't need a lot of money to enjoy life and have a great quality of life. And, hiking is still free.
Right.
Backpacking for the most part is still free. And stuff that I love, it doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money.
Right.
So when I think about retirement, all right, so I've thought, if Marlene and I had $250,000 in real estate, let's say we kept our house and it's worth that.
Right.
This is my little, I'm like, where's that for life? It almost feels wrong.
Yep.
I don't, and I realize there's unforeseen that comes up. And that's probably the thing I've been thinking most about, even with, talking to a lot of families with aging parents and how to care for them, and some of the situations that we're in with our parents, how to take care of them in those years. And my assumption had always been, until this happened, that whenever I died, I'm going to be mentally sharp and physically well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about it, you're like, that's really highly unlikely. Right. So in my mind, there is a place for having resources set aside. I've even looked at some of those, the aging care insurance you can get,
mm-hmm.
so that Zach and Carly, have something that they can lean on. It's one thing if mom and dad have 6 kids. That's a lot. You can spread a lot of care around with that. Poor Zach, he's the only one. So if we don't do well, he's gonna. It's just a lot.
There's a line, and this is the thing. I'm trying to listen to what Jesus would speak into. I mean, in my mind, trying to, of course, the famous line of, be careful.
Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A
man's life, the good life does not consist
in the abundance of possessions.
And how much you have, we want to believe that we can control more than we can. And money always supports that illusion. And it seems like what the message that's yelling out to us, that's being sold to us, is you've got to prepare for every eventuality by having more money set aside. So whether that's, again, this insurance we have, or this supplemental insurance we have, or this thing that, here I'm not speaking to what's right or wrong, other than that word, it's from Jesus. Let my kingdom guide. Live more out of trust than trying to control. Even when it comes to your money, I want to lean more on the side of, I've got these resources, and rather than pile up gobs that I might not need, to try and prepare for every eventuality, it's that line, this living somewhere in the tension between, there's a value for savings,
sure,
but there's also a huge value for generosity and investing. We think about investing in us, but investing in others, investing in the kingdom, investing in blessing others. And
did you listen to my message on Sunday?
I did not.
I was preaching on Sunday, and that's exactly what I shared in that thing.
Well, we're just so much alike.
Well, I know. I just finished the whole
right
talk.
Or wrong.
I finished the talk quoting John Piper in his book, Don't Waste Your Life. I've always loved that book. It's just a great read. But he talks about, being clear on what's important. And he said, you don't have to, he said, to make a huge difference in eternity, in the world and in eternity, he said, you don't have to know a lot of things. He said, there's only a few great things you need to know, maybe even one. He said, and figure out what that is. And that passion for God's glory and the world's good. He said, and then speak it and live it and die for it. He said, and you will not waste your life. And I finished the talk that day just saying, hey, don't spend your life, don't save your life, because Jesus said, if you try to save your life, you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
And I said, for God's sake, don't waste your life. Invest your life in God and his kingdom, for his glory and for the world's good. And I realized that is what I want for my life. And that is what I want for others to do with their life.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, John Piper talks about how he talks about a true tragedy being the couple that retired in their late 50s and had a 30-foot yacht and, moved to Florida and collected shells. And he's like, imagine them standing before the judgment seat of Christ going, Jesus, look at all of these shells. These are just amazing. He said, that would be tragic. And I'm like, yep, don't want that. Because I even talked about why, in my mind, the judgment seat of Christ is not an ominous, dreadful thing. It's like an award ceremony. It's this thing we're looking forward to. It's, gosh, this is, not only has God saved us from sin and death and separation from him.
Right.
But on top of that, he rewards us for the stuff we happen to get right. I just think that's amazing. And I talked about the CMA Awards, which I think are tonight, hosted by Peyton Manning and Luke something.
Oh, really?
And I mentioned this Sunday. I said, it just dawned on me that we have an entire generation out there right now that has no idea that Peyton Manning actually played football. They thought, oh yeah, like the game show host, the commercial guy, the guy that's hosting the CMA Awards. I'm like, you realize he was a football player? What? Really? What position did he play? Well, he was quarterback. It's a pretty big deal back in the day.
He was good.
Won a Super Bowl.
Couple of them, I think.
Was it two of them?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just like, well, that's right, the Indy.
Yeah,
the Indy one. I don't count those. If it's not a Broncos Super Bowl to me, it doesn't even count.
It's not a real one.
But I realized I want to be looking forward to. I want for us to be looking forward to that day, not dreading it. And it having to do with how we lived our life. And it just came to me. And I think sometimes. So I was speaking at a Methodist church, and it's kind of fun because most of the people there know I come from a Baptist background. I said, one of the things that I grew up in the Baptist world that I grew up in, I said, we were always talking about the second coming of Christ, the return of Christ. And I said, as much as we're anticipating the return of Christ, know this, Christ is anticipating a return from us as well. It is, because there's so many stories. As I started reading Roger, Luke 19 and 20 and Matthew 24 and 25, in time, Jesus tells the parable of right before he enters Jerusalem, he tells the parable of the minas, where this king is going to go to another country and be crowned king and then come back, which had actually happened 30 years before. This was Herod the Great's son, Archelaus, who was going to be the tetrarch, the Herod over Judah. Well, the Jews sent a delegation after him saying, we don't want him to be our king. He only lasted 9 years. Partly because of the unrest,
okay.
But he was made king,
right?
He lasted for about 9 years. So Jesus is even in the story. He's referencing something that they've experienced, and he's referencing himself. You don't want me to be king, but I am, and I'm going to go away, and I will be coronated, king, and then I'm returning. And he's looking for a return on this mina that he invested with his 10 servants. When he gets into Jerusalem, he does the parable of the talents, and he also does the parable of the tenants. And I had forgotten about that parable. This thing of there's a man who owns a vineyard, so he plants it and then he leases it out to tenants. And I said, now who owns the vineyard? Well, the owner. I mean, it's like the tenants don't own it. And I was talking about even how we sometimes live like owners. We don't actually own anything.
Yep.
Our life is on lease.
Yep.
Our talents are on lease. And I was struck with this, is very convicting to me, how often I still live like an owner. In other words, I forget that this life is an award. It's not a gift. Like I can do whatever.
Right. Because my question is with my stuff is not only what do I want to do with my stuff, but what do I want to get from my stuff? I want to turn my stuff into something. I want to get a return. But the question that Jesus lovingly invites us into is no, it's my stuff.
It's my stuff.
And one thing I love you enjoying it. That's one of the things, but I also love you giving it, and I love you investing in it. I love you doing this, and this is so. It's this partnership which is what even a trust or a stewardship is. It's
It's a
it's
part.
God.
Yeah.
I'm giving you.
That's a great word.
Yeah.
I need to mention that to John for next week, because next week they're talking about stewardship. I talked about awardship this week.
Yeah.
That's stewardship, and then reward that happens in the final message. But you're right. It's a partnership. We're invited into this.
Stunning.
And it's amazing. For when you look at the parable of the talents, it says that this master distributed his property. So it's very clear about who the owner was,
Right,
to his servants. He says, put it to work. Jesus tells the story of the unjust steward, which is for some, it's a confusing. For me, for a lot of years, it was a confusing parable. Right. It's the guy that he's about to lose his job. He's the manager. He's been wasting the owner's possessions, apparently living like it's his. But he realizes his job is about to be taken from him, because the guy says, I want you to give an account because you can't be my manager anymore. And so he goes and he uses the master's resources, gives everyone discounts and deals and whatnot. And then he comes back and the master's like, wow, he commended him. You've acted shrewdly. He took care of himself in the future, because these people are now going to be endeared to him. But I thought, but that's how God wants us to use he wants us to use his resources to endear him to others. And in doing so, we are actually, what's the word? We're positively impacting our own future.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he finishes that whole thing by saying, Therefore, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. God wants us to use his resources to gain friends in this world for him and for the kingdom. And it again positively impacts our future. So not only does it positively impact the people we're investing in now,
right,
and their future, it's positively investing in our own future.
Well, what's fascinating, and this is such an important reality, is all the things that when Jesus says, store up treasure in heaven, when he says invest, one of the byproducts always is blessing for us.
Yeah.
In other words, which is
crazy.
It's where, even if I think the simplest thing, like we think about how hard generosity is. Generosity blesses somebody else, but invariably, and if we think about it all, it was Jesus who said, it's more blessed to give than receive. We don't realize what generosity does in us. Now, we know, honestly, there's a good feeling attached to it.
Roger, you're right. Jesus didn't just say it's better to give than to receive. He didn't say that.
No.
He said there's greater blessing in giving than in receiving. And I'm like, gosh, I love receiving. I mean, that does seem like a blessing. He said, oh, the greater blessing, though. The greater blessing.
But I've experienced that at times. It's like the lie, and maybe one of the lies of the enemy, is that serving others and giving others is a loss to you. And Jesus is just countering that.
Yeah.
Practically shouting, no. Don't you see? Now, your goal in giving isn't, okay, now I'm going to force God's hand. Jesus is talking about the way the world he worked. We were made. We're living out what we're made for. We're living for ourselves. When we're hoarding, when it's my world, when I'm praying my will be done, when I'm shrinking, I'm getting smaller. I'm diminishing. I'm not getting more satisfied. I'm more at peace. I'm more content. I'm actually happier when I'm investing in God and others.
And Jesus is always pointing to these. It's like, I was thinking as you're talking, it's like God's world and our world. Our world says you take care of yourself and you invest in yourself and you make sure that you're taken care of. And if you have some leftovers, you can help others, but you're going
to be happy and content and satisfied.
And yet in God's world, it's just flipped. It's like, no, invest in others and be generous with others and
forgive.
He's like,
let people off the hook.
Yeah. If you even Paul talks to this, and he argues from the human world. He says, we all know if you reap what you sow. So if you reap generosity, you're going to experience generosity. It's just it's a given in God's world.
It's a given,
but it's counterintuitive because of our world.
which is the broken world.
Which is the broken world.
We don't realize, again, the things that just seem so obvious. When we hear the advertisers or others say,
Yep.
well, look out for yourself because nobody else is. Well, that's broken world thinking.
Right.
That's every man for himself thinking.
Right.
That's, well, yes, that is where the world has gotten to, where we literally think it would be an axiomatic for people to say, well, of course you got to care for yourself.
What's axiomatic mean?
Well, I think it just means obvious, or that's just
a great word. I want to use it.
It's just a given. That's just an obvious. So when someone, well, even if someone says, well, it's natural, of course you're going to think about yourself first. I'm not sure the world was, because God isn't wired that way. God, the Father, isn't Father first. The Holy Spirit isn't Spirit first. The Son isn't Son. They're other. And the joy of God and community has always been loving other. What got twisted, I believe, one of the things we didn't realize, and it's so twisted, and it's been so twisted so long, it's become the norm. Well, of course, you're going to think about yourself first. No, that's part of what's broken. It's not that we're unconcerned. Here's the thing. When you're loving others in the way the world was made, in the way God acts, love always comes around. So you're never doing it for yourself, but you're always been, that's just the way that love works. It's that even if you look at something like, I brought up forgiveness a second ago, we think forgiveness is for somebody else, but forgiveness always, when I'm living out mercy, I'm living out the way God is. We talk about even with that phrase, forgiveness is unlocking the prison for someone only to find that you were the one who was in prison, you were that. But this is true in almost every area where we think that doing the right thing is for someone else, but no, it's actually blessing me. So I don't have to. The broken world thinking is, look out for yourself. If you've been offended, get revenge. You take vengeance for yourself. You look out. If you want something, that's the first thing. You check out your needs. But Jesus invites us in a way. It's the Lord's Prayer. Give us, not give me, give us. It's focusing on God and others. The Lord's Prayer is an invitation into the world the way it's supposed to be, rather than the world that
God's world.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lord's Prayer starts with, your will be done in this world, just as it is in heaven. And I've always understood that God's will is being affected perfectly in the heavens, in the heavenly realm, in maybe even on other planets. I don't know how all that's working out, but I do know he says, pray for that to happen on earth. Pray for that to be taking place on earth, which is counter axiomatic in some ways. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Because
hopefully I didn't screw up the idea of axiomatic.
I don't ever get to use the word axiomatic. No, and we've talked about
context
this many times, but I was thinking about it again, not just on forgiveness, but on serving others. So when I tend to get sideways with Marlena in my mind, and I feel that disappointment or anger or botheredness or annoyance because she's not doing something that I need her to do or want her to do, or I think that she should do, whatever that is. And
how often does this occur, Bruce?
Often enough, Raj. As axiomatic as that might be.
How many sideways moments, let's say in a given year? Let's estimate.
There's quite a few.
I know you were saying something important.
But no, I love it. That's the first time you tried to get me off track. Normally that's what I'm doing to you. I'm staying on track, which is axiomatic.
You can't do it.
But when I'm reflecting on thinking about the things that Marlene is not doing that I might need or want or expect or whatever else, I'm experiencing negative emotion. And I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling. I hate being annoyed. I hate being frustrated. I hate being angry. I don't like those feelings. And then when God reminds me, because he does it all the time, Bruce, your job, and I love it. He always uses that word, your job is to love Marlena, to care for her, to serve her, and forgive her. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to serve Marlena. So all of a sudden, when I serve Marlena, it was as simple as this is going to sound so silly to our listeners, but they're like washing the dishes this morning. because we both got up. We didn't wash them last night. We didn't wash them the night before last. Just like both of us knew they were there.
There's a pile up in the kitchen.
Well, we don't have a dishwasher anymore, because the other house, the tiny house does not even have room for a washing machine. And we're both, she's like, I can't do it. I gotta let's do it tomorrow. And I was in the process of making the coffee, and I'm like, well, I'll just do it. I'll just take care of it while the coffee's
waiting
brewing.
on the coffee. Yeah.
And I realized I was experiencing joy. I was experiencing a happiness in doing a task, a chore that I don't like. But I was serving Marlena because she had already verbalized, I just don't want to do that. I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I can do that. But it changed. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just
Yes.
weird. It changes the way you feel. And instead of having what I would call negative feelings about an expectation or something not being done or an annoyance or being bothered by, I was experiencing joy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do this.
Yeah.
And by the way, we both felt better afterwards because we looked over there in the kitchen and there wasn't anything in the sink. Now think about that. So 2 people felt good after that.
Yeah.
So we doubled the good feeling because I knew Marlena wasn't feeling good about leaving him in the sink because it's sort of a negative procrastinating. I should probably, and we both felt it. We should probably do something about that. And we left both of us feeling good. That's just interesting.
Right.
That has and the same thing with forgiveness. We expend negative emotion when I'm wanting to get revenge or when I'm wanting them to get theirs or they owe me an apology. This is something I thought about for the first time last week. I wrote it down. I'm like, if anyone owes us anything, including an apology, we haven't forgiven them. They owe us because that's the whole idea of debtor relationship. And I realized if someone owes us approval or an apology, we can't really love them. Right. In other words, if I have to have approval from other people, I can't really love them. Or if I have to have an apology from them, I can't really love them because either way, I have an expectation that I want them to fulfill.
And in that moment, it strikes me again that this is that thing that Jesus is constantly pulling is me at the center. You owe me. Or I'm thinking about my needs, but I'm also thinking my offenses, my wounds, you owe me. I want this. I need this.
Roger.
Yeah. It's me at the center. And this is the thing God's constantly trying to save us from is this actually, me at the center isn't the happy life. It's Jesus saying, don't you see, accumulating, storing up money for yourself isn't the happy life. Having everything you could want isn't the happy life. Getting revenge. When you get that vengeance, actually Taylor Swift, one of her songs in there is dressed for revenge, not dressed for friends, dressed for revenge. Anyway, but again, the pull of there's revenge is enticing. That'll be satisfying.
Roger, here's the thing, because it's powerful. But Roger, think about in my mind, there's negative power and there's positive power.
Right.
Negative power drives negative emotion. Again, when I'm seeking revenge, what was it that Inigo Montoya said in the Princess Bride? He said, "I've been in the revenge
to die."
Well, but he said, "I've been toward the end." He said, "I've been in the revenge business so long. Now that I've gotten revenge, I don't know what to do with my life." And he was sad. You see, it was just this interesting.
I forgot that.
Yeah, it didn't create for him what he thought it was going to create. It didn't bring the resolve that he thought it was going to bring to get revenge on his father's six-finger death.
And on that note, it's like one of the things the Proverbs could say is revenge is never satisfied.
Yeah.
Vengeance, it's like or unforgiveness. It's never, even if we can look and say, even if we're demanding justice for a thing, this person took the life of someone I love. We want, it's not enough that when
didn't bring anyone back.
Right. It's like that focus, I'll get this back for me, whatever, never fully satisfies. It's the desire for me is insatiable. But when I'm serving, this is the thing, when I'm forgiving, this is Jesus constantly trying to, when I'm forgiving, when I'm giving generously, when I'm serving, when I'm washing the dishes, when I don't feel like doing it, actually, these are what I was made for. This is where I move more towards wholeness. This is actually where I move more towards contentment.
Yeah.
You look again at the United States. Do the polls, do the doctors and the therapists, are we more contented? Are we happier? We are. You look at this wealth. We talk about how many of us are millionaires or near millionaires, have access to all kinds of credit and money. We have all kinds of things we can have. Do we lead the world in satisfaction and happiness and contentment? Are suicides dropping off? Or do we describe ourselves as people joyful? No, the advertisers never have to keep saying, no, you're going to, no, the problem is you don't have enough. You haven't looked out for yourself enough. You haven't accumulated, you haven't had enough pleasure experiences. And Jesus is like, oh, please. It's
yeah. I was thinking, and I share it a lot in this office, but I just think that the way of Christ and following the way of Christ is the key to emotional health, which is just a fascinating thing because Jesus never references specifically emotional health. But I think when he said things like, blessed is the man that, even the Beatitudes, these are keys to emotional health. This thing, believe it or not, of loving your enemy, as counter axiomatic as that is.
Oh, that's good.
It is the way to emotional health. We would think that loving our enemies would make us crazy, but no, it's like it frees you. It just absolutely frees you. Someone curses you, well, I can curse them back and we can both be angry.
Right.
Or I can offer blessing and either both of us feel better or only one person's mad. And it ain't me.
No, you just nailed it.
Oh, I nailed it. I love it when I nail it. This doesn't happen very often on the podcast, by the way.
And it should be so axiomatic, but no. But listen to the words. Blessed are, joyful, contented. This is not a reward. This is not God saying, if you do these things, I'm going to give you something as a consequence. I'm going to give.
It's a present tense. As you do it, you are.
Right.
It's happening right then.
Blessed are the merciful. It's not that God's saying.
I've got to write this down. That's so good.
That, and I've always realized with the merciful, okay, it sounds like a wonderful word, but you're only called to be merciful. You only need to be merciful when someone has screwed you over, when you've encountered a loss, when people have. Mercy is the stuff forgiveness is made of. That's the family you're drawing from there. So as you are being merciful, you're being blessed. The blessing, because this is what you were made for. You were made to be merciful.
That's a great point. I do think there's future blessing in that too, though. It's so it's like this crazy both and.
Right.
We're having this immediate blessing of forgiving a person. That we're experiencing blessing, but God also says, that counts for later too. In a crazy way, God also brings reward because he says, and Jesus references what we do in this life. He says these little things that you're doing now, they pay huge dividends in the future. When you look at the one guy took one mina and he got 10 more minas, which is, it's just a very small amount of money. That's like relatively small. He takes 4,000 and makes it 40,000. I'm using Alabama's minimum wage for that. 3 months. I know 3 months of wages, which is an ouch. But he and because of that, his reward is I want you to take charge of 10 cities. And I know I've talked about that before, but it is this. Jesus says, if you've been faithful in a few things, I can entrust you with much. If you haven't, this is what's very interesting. If you haven't been trustworthy in handling someone else's property, referencing everything in this world because you don't own it, who then will give you property of your own? It's almost like in the next realm, Roger, maybe we'll be owners. Hey, Bruce, I'm going to give you that planet over. It's a really small one. In fact, some people thought it was just a moon, but it's a planet. That's yours now.
I'm listening to you, and it hit me.
Please tell me I nailed it again.
No, it's my turn to nail something.
Oh, wow. Well, that's
coming out of your nailing. Coming out of your nailing.
Axiomatic, I looked it up, means self-evident or unquestionable.
So, what about the threefold blessing?
Oh, I just took it to 2 levels. You're going 3.
No, here's the. So,
is this going to become a theology?
Let's think about mercy.
Okay.
Let's think about forgiveness.
Yep.
If I'm listening to what you're saying, as I'm extending mercy, I'm living out the character of God.
I know where you're going.
But I'm blessing that person.
Yep. That's the
you think about the gift. So I'm being blessed, but forgiveness is a huge blessing.
And if the threefold blessing, you're actually the first person that's blessed.
Right.
Because you're initiating what God wants for all of us, which is to love
the
mercy,
joy in the image of the Father.
And as I extend mercy, I'm initiating that.
Right.
I experience the first blessing. The person I'm extending mercy to experiences the second blessing. And later on, I experience God's blessing in ways that we don't even know what that's going to look like totally, other than it seems to be more responsibility. In other words, it's not more stuff. Even when you think of managing money and then taking charge of 10 cities, it's cool, but it's also a tremendous amount of responsibility.
Right.
When you say I'm in charge of 10 cities, you mean I have to like
all the time.
manage 10 cities like all the time? It's just an interesting to reward. The word reward literally means to again put under the custody of.
Yeah.
To reward. All I say, there is potentially a 4-fold blessing.
Well, could be a 5-fold. Because
here we go. Gosh, this is so deep.
Well,
today.
No,
so deep.
But I was thinking, because Jesus will talk about this as well, that the paying forward. So we think about that the person who's received mercy, is more likely to extend mercy. So let's take in the area of generosity. Instead of hoarding for myself, I give. So immediately I'm living out the heart of Jesus, what I was made for. So I'm blessed. The person who's receiving a gift, they're blessed. They're encouraged. But this is now an inspiration for them to
do the same
and give the same.
And others observing it.
Right.
To do the same.
Right.
Roger, maybe this is what Jesus was talking about. He said, when you live your life a certain way, you'll experience fruit 30 times, 60 times, or 100 times more than what was sown. It's not just my action that's going to have immediate 100-fold effect, but what you said is true. As we extend mercy to this person, they extend mercy to another person, and then the person that they've extends mercy to another. It's exponential.
Right.
In other words, the exponentiality of doing one thing right. I'm using the wrong term. But one act of kindness, one act of love, one act of mercy, one act of generosity has this, we would say, ripple effect. But I'm thinking it's more than a ripple effect. It's exponential.
It's not just blessed are you, blessed is the world, but blessed is the community. Blessed is the community in which you live. So it's just the call. When we're all living for us, everybody loses.
Yep.
But when we're living for God and others, we're blessed, they're blessed, the community is blessed. We're blessed now, we're blessed in the future. It's
going to go into a little ditty there. We're blessed, they're blessed, everybody blessed.
Well, it is ditty time.
Old Blessing had a farm.
Should we finish with a song ditty? I don't know.
Well, I'm still wrapping my head around this whole. I was thinking the threefold blessing. I'm like, I missed it by 97 times. Jesus talks about this 100-fold blessing, a 100-fold return on our life, a 100. I'm like, yeah, you're exactly right. Maybe that's why it's so important that we be light, because as we're light bearers, another person experiences light, and then they begin to reflect light.
Right.
And as they reflect light on another person, they begin to reflect light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. It's the light of mine.
Now I am.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. 100 times. That was good. That was real good.
Oh.